to digital hospitality. This is our Rising Tide live call. We are live streaming and we are grateful that you're here. This is a special episode on a Monday. Super excited. I got the Cali Barbecue Media team here. If you're watching this, if you're part of our digital hospitality community, we are very excited to move from, we started on Clubhouse. We did 2 shows a week on Clubhouse, audio first during the pandemic. Then we moved to LinkedIn audio. And if you are on LinkedIn, LinkedIn has made an update. They will no longer be supporting LinkedIn audio. So we're coming at to you with video. So welcome to the show. Today, we're going to be talking about live streaming for business. We want you to be a part of this conversation. This is a different type of show. So we want to have as many podcast guests as possible because you will be on a podcast if you join us on stage. This is recorded. This will go on our digital hospitality show. And we have people all over the globe. Every Wednesday, every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, 6 p.m. London time, we will do a live stream across multiple platforms. We want to hear your story. If you are thinking about getting into the podcast game, if you are thinking about hospitality, how does hospitality, technology, marketing, branding, sales, how do they all intersect? That's what this community is all about, and we can't wait to hear your voice and to bring you up on stage. I'm going to do a quick intros to my team that is joining me today. Gavin, can you let us know, 60 seconds, who are you and what are you working on a Monday?
Yeah, I'm Gavin. I'm a producer for Cali BBQ Media, formerly with Donut Media and iHeartMedia. I love podcasting and love to help out our external clients grow their networks. Today, we're working on one of our clients, Anthony Zoller, getting his podcast off the ground, getting his message out. And that's what I'm working on today. Excited for this conversation.
Really excited, Gavin. Appreciate you. Mike Biseglia, go for it.
Yeah, thank you. Producer, Cali BBQ Media. I'm in Middletown, New Jersey. Excited to be working on some digital hospitality content today. Really cool story about 2 ranch owners in Texas to hear their story. I think people will really enjoy that. That'll come out in a couple of hours. And also working on Rising Tides. Loving this community. Super excited to be on video. And I can't wait to see everybody's faces today. Thank you, Shawn.
That's awesome. So my team is going to help me. I've got Stover, shout out to the producer in the background. We are coming to you from Riverside. So there's a Riverside link. If you're part of the digital hospitality community, we have a LinkedIn chat. We have an Instagram chat. We drop the links in there so that you can easily join. We want to hear you up here. We want to hear you talk about any live streaming tips that you might have if you've gone live on Facebook, if you've gone live on Instagram, if you've gone live on TikTok, if you've gone live on YouTube, if you've gone live on LinkedIn. We want to hear your story. This is not about us. This is about community. So we appreciate you guys for joining this special show. I'm going to start with a little story as we bring people up on stage, hopefully. I'll talk about live streaming at our barbecue business. So we own Cali Barbecue in San Diego. We've been open since 2008. We now have 3 locations just opened on the Navy Exchange, which has been an awesome opportunity for us. We also have 2 stadium locations in Snapdragon Stadium. And then we have our main location in Spring Valley. Spring Valley, we started live streaming, I want to say during the pandemic. So my wife, she goes to Bulgaria every year to visit her mother and her father, takes my son and my daughter. Every year we go to Bulgaria, but they left early this year. And I believe it was around 2001. So really height of the pandemic. No one was traveling. It was really crazy to go through the airports with going to LAX and being the only people in the airport was a really creepy and eerie thing, but they left early. And I was left alone. And this was the time TikTok really started pushing live streaming. And I said, well, why don't we try out live streaming for Cali Barbecue? And I remember on Father's Day, I got to the restaurant at 4:30 in the morning. Bernice, our pit master, was there. And I told Bernice that we were going to live stream the entire process of pulling the brisket off the smoker, pulling the pork butts off the smoker, fabricating the 180 racks of ribs, cooking the tri-tip, and we were going to live stream either until my arm fell off or until my battery died. And it was crazy what happened. We started live streaming, and it's a really weird thing when you're live streaming and no one's showing up. I think all of us that have live streamed have had that. You go live and you think that all these people are going to watch and nobody's watching. So you start to get a little bit nervous. But as you push through and you realize you have a story to tell, this is something that most people don't get to see. And it was really cool for me to get over my fear and to just start talking to the camera. So I was talking to my iPhone, talking to the community, and slowly 4.5 hours, we built that live stream from a couple hundred people that were watching Bernice do her craft, work on, pulling all of these hundreds of pounds of brisket and pork, fabricating these 180 racks of ribs, how she cooks the process, and literally just answering questions and letting people know a little bit about our business, who we are, what we did. And at the end, we had over 100,000 people on my personal TikTok. So Shawn P. Walchef on TikTok, we had over 100,000 people that joined that live stream. And it was kind of like this aha moment of the things that we believe deeply in this community. We believe that the internet connects all of us, that we're all trying to figure out business. We're all trying to figure out storytelling. We're all trying to figure out how to do better in our jobs. We also know that we're not alone. I think that was probably the biggest takeaway for me, is knowing that I don't need to make TikTok. I don't need to make YouTube. Don't need to make Riverside. All these tools are already available for us. So a lot of business owners ask, well, so what's the takeaway? What did that lead to in sales? And it's a really difficult question when you go, what's the ROI of live streaming? What's the ROI of bringing your team on, having consistent meetings on Clubhouse, having consistent meetings on LinkedIn audio, now moving to Riverside? What's the ROI of doing this type of content? And I'll shout out Dean LeBay, who's part of our digital hospitality community. He shared in one of our sessions, what's the COI? What's the cost of inaction? That's the proper question. Not what's the return on investment, but what's the cost of inaction? So if you don't start live streaming, if you don't start using these tools, if you pretend like social media doesn't matter, that YouTube doesn't matter, and LinkedIn doesn't matter, or you don't have a story to tell, you're going to get left behind, because other people are going to learn how to figure it out. And the persistent, consistent pursuit, which is something that David Meltzer teaches me, it's how are you willing to fail? How many times are you willing to fail? How many times are you willing to go live? How many times are you willing to do it when no one's watching? When I think about our digital hospitality show, that was a crazy idea in 2017. I've convinced Derek Marceau, my co-host who launched the show with me, but Behind the Smoke Barbecue War Stories, that we were going to start this podcast, and it was audio only for the first 50 episodes. And we were going to do it weekly, like no matter what, we were going to figure out a way to do it. And like nobody was listening in the beginning. And so many people are like, Shawn, that doesn't make sense. Like, why is anyone going to come buy barbecue from your restaurant? Because you're doing a business and marketing and sales and entrepreneurship podcast. And I'm like, I'm curious about the technology. I'm curious about the people that I'm bringing onto the show. And I think for us doing these shows now, we know that there's people all over the globe. We have friends in London. We have friends in India. We have friends all over the United States. We have friends in Canada that know who we are, know what we do, just because we're willing to fall on our face. And it's going to take time. We're going to learn how to do this thing. And it's going to be a little bit different than it was on Clubhouse. And it's going to be different than it was on LinkedIn audio. But we're going to figure it out, and we're going to show up. And Wednesday will be a better show. Friday will be a better show. And that's our goal. So if you're watching this, please join us. If you're listening on the digital hospitality feed, we really appreciate you listening. We have our first person on stage, Elizabeth Doss, one of our digital hospitality leaders. Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. This is different.
Well, why don't we get back to what we do best, which is let's introduce yourself to the community, introduce yourself to those that are live, and then those that are listening on replay. Give us 60 seconds. Who are you, and what do you believe?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Elizabeth Doss of Izzy Inc. Studios, and I'm a motion graphic designer, but I specialize mainly in creating animated GIFs for brands and businesses to leverage across social platforms, to engage with their community, to animate their engagement, and also just to have that touch point and connection that's a little unexpected and hopefully brings smiles to people's faces. Today, I believe that I was thinking about this time period and thinking how odd it's been. We've been speaking to one another for years.
Yep.
And now it's going to be face to face. So I thought that part was totally new, because I know I've met several people from the community all over the world, and same with others, but this is definitely going to up the game in the connection part of things. I did want to encourage people, because I just pushed the buttons. If you are on a desktop, there's a little button at the very bottom of your screen that says request live access, and you're going to want to click that button, and then you need to fill out the 3 questions that it asks you, and then the team will be able to get you up on stage when they're available. And make sure that you mute your microphones in between when you're not speaking, so that it's clear for everyone else. Anyway, I'll throw it back to you, Shawn.
Well, Elizabeth, let's give us a story or a lesson. Live streaming. So I know it's a little bit different, so we're going to figure out how to share, how to bring people up, but we want to treat this as getting as many podcast guests as possible into the hour to 90 minutes that we do these calls. So please share a lesson or a story about live streaming.
Yeah, sure. So I have been in the live streaming business for quite a while, partially because my father is a minister and I've been in ministry stuff. So we tried to figure out pretty early on, how could we broadcast the services or the teachings, the sharing time. And so a lot of it was a crash course. I remember back in the day when I had a webcam duct taped to a tripod. And we called it the ghetto cam. And so it was an opportunity for people from all over to be able to join in. And even now, we currently, although I am very curious about Riverside, so I've been poking around about what all it can do. But right now we broadcast to Facebook through Zoom, so that, especially during the pandemic, it opened up for everybody to be able to stay connected when we weren't allowed to be in the same room. And so the live streaming part of it was huge. But there is a technique in learning how to host in this format of all of the community building parts to live streaming. So it's not just the people that are on camera, but it's like Stover, who is in the comment section on all of these things, cultivating those things, and then even gathering questions from these other realms to bring back to the table so that people will have a chance to answer. But it's that idea of being able to talk to them. So a friend of mine, Stephanie Gillis Paulgard, we host a show once a week. We've had to take a break for the last couple weeks, but where we've been doing this live stream on LinkedIn. We use Zoom to pipe in the live stream. But one thing we know that it's important to do is to communicate with those who are active in the comment section, calling out their names, calling out these things, so that you make the people that aren't in the room feel like they are in the room, that they're being seen, that they're being heard, that you're answering their questions, even if it's off topic just a little bit, because it gets them coming back to say, I'm a part of this. And so anyway, I think it's a really fascinating way to include that. Same with during our church services, the sound guy is the one back there making sure that he's commenting on Facebook and doing other things, so that the people that are watching feel like they're a part. Anyway, I'll hand it back to you, Shawn.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. And great tips about commenting, managing the comments and understanding. I mean, just going back to that live stream that I was doing with Bernice, I mean, one of the things early on that I started doing was calling out the names. It's easy when the names are easy to pronounce, but you get people from all over. But just acknowledging that they're there, asking them questions. One of the things I would ask during our live stream was, where in the world are you watching? And like, that was crazy to me to see people in Chile watching our live stream, people in England watching our live stream, people in Texas. And we're a barbecue business in San Diego. And I think that goes to the part of like not being alone, of knowing that there's other people out there that are trying to improve their business, that are curious, that maybe don't get to see behind the scenes what it looks like to run a barbecue business or a church service. So I appreciate that. Richard Liverman, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. Give us your 60-second introduction. Who are you? What do you believe? And then share a story about live streaming or a tip.
Good evening from England. My name is Richard. I live by a mantra of don't be boring, which my good friend Mitch called me out on today on LinkedIn. I work as a consultant, coach, mentor, and branding person. And I'm really curious about this topic. And I think one of the things that I've seen a great deal of recently, and in fact, Elizabeth called me out on it when she was in the UK in the spring, was the idea of live streaming. And we kind of get this kind of bit where we're in front of camera and we try too hard or we start overthinking it. And I suddenly came to the realization with Elizabeth and her husband James ringing in my ears. I've been live streaming my whole life. I've been talking to people and having conversations. It's that simple. And I think, Shawn, you and I were having a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about the difference between business to business and business to consumer. And I think everybody gets overly confused about it. It's just telling stories. And if you think about live streaming, it's just having a conversation with people. The way we communicate might be changing in terms of the delivery of the technology. But we've been having conversations for a very, very long time. And I think that's one of my thoughts about it is how can we encourage people to have a conversation? And I think in a world of AI, where a lot of conversations are boring or staged, those real human conversations with real human content have never been more important. So I'm curious to see where this goes.
Yeah, I'm very excited. So are you going to teach me anything today?
Well, obviously, I am the self-proclaimed cultural ambassador to the North Americans. And the question I've got, Shawn, is let's say you're wandering around London, I was on Thursday, and you think, oh no, I've run out of cash. Where would you get cash from? And there's no banks. What's that little machine called where you put your card in?
The ATM.
No, it's a hole in the wall. Come on.
A hole in the wall? You have money in your holes and walls?
That's what we call an ATM. It's called a hole in the wall.
As a branding man, do you think that we could do a better job with branding?
Let's not even go there with garages and garages.
Oh my goodness, that's fantastic. Well, Richard, I appreciate that. We're going to kick it over to Gavin. Gavin, you've been in the live streaming business your whole career. Can you share a story, share a lesson?
Yeah.
What do you got?
Yeah. So, and Richard hit on something there, about adapting and you don't want to get left behind. And I came from the radio business, and radio, when you think about when that started, it was literally, if your signal couldn't reach someone, they're not going to be able to hear it. With the great thing of the internet and streaming now is that you're able to reach so many people. You were talking about how many people, where they're coming from. You're able to hit people all over. And with streaming, you're not confined to people in their car or listening on an app. You're able to reach different platforms. And what Elizabeth hit on, which is so great, is audience engagement, being able to chat with people while you're going. And there's so many ways to implement it, whatever industry you're in, whatever method you want to use streaming for, you can implement it for your own business. So I've seen it in radio starting out in around 2011, and the internet's going, social media is going, but then it became video. Video is where we need to be. People don't want to just hear you; they want to see you. They want to interact with you. And so now you're seeing radio stations all over the country. They have a live stream of their broadcast as they're talking. Companies like Barstool are recording themselves reacting to games, so you can watch them reacting to the same game you're watching on TV. So there's so many ways to implement it, but the discoverability of platforms like YouTube and being able to have your content wherever it originates, having it to go out to Twitch, YouTube, wherever, Instagram, you can reach so many people, you can engage with them, and you can really build a community in ways that you couldn't before when you're, straddled to just the radio platform, just cars. And now cars aren't even coming out with AM radio, so you may not even be able to get that original signal. So yeah, live streaming, I think every business should incorporate it in some way. And I love this conversation. So.
We have Brandma. I see Brandma's asking, why are you not on stage, Stover? Mike, do you want to explain since we, as Cali Barbecue Media, we build in public, we might as well share why people are on stage and why they're not.
Yeah, so a true producer behind the scenes, working all the magic to get people up on stage, look at any requests that come in over the chat, and it is the truest producer mode that you can think of. So behind the scenes, doing a lot of hard work, especially as we figure this all out. And I made up everything I just said. Here's Stover.
Wait, so we can see Stover, but the audience can't see Stover. That's how it's working.
Okay. So
I got you.
So he's like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain.
I love it.
Here and there.
Well, Mike, why don't you share a story about live streaming? You've been in the business, radio business, live streaming business. Tell us a good story.
Yeah, first of all, what Elizabeth said before, like now that we can see everybody's faces, I do feel a little starstruck. Like I'm like, there's Elizabeth and Richard, and I don't have to send him a DM about his Cavs beating the Celtics yesterday. Great win, which was just I know, and Mercedes jumping on screen. So that is super cool. As this continues to evolve, but yeah, I love. Let me say this, and Gavin got my mind thinking about live streaming because I was in radio, and I remember, we do like a segment of the show. It's a 15-minute segment, do our sports talk, and then go to commercial, and there'd be 5 minutes of the hosts behind the scenes in the control room, pretending to take phone calls of guests calling or looking on their social media. And I was like, I love the behind the scenes stuff of the live stream, sometimes more than the actual show when we're kind of in this rehearsed mode. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I remember thinking to myself, wow, it's so cool that you can go behind the scenes and see what's happening for your favorite people. So like taking that now here, where you can be live streaming on a topic and getting to see people converse in said topic that you normally would not have been able to see, is so the future of everything. And I'm so glad to see, so many faces here up today as that evolves. Myself personally using live streaming, I did it a little bit like 6-7 years ago when Twitter actually allowed you just to stream live. And I've mentioned this before in the community. I was an Uber Eats delivery driver. And one time I was like, I have a podcast about being an Uber Eats delivery driver. I want to encourage engagement. And I don't know if this was allowed or legal, but I'm like, let me put myself live, walking up to people's homes, dropping off food. And this was way before the industry changed, where you could, you had to drop off the bag, ring the doorbell, someone exchange it. And I was like doing that and exchanging that, and people loved it. And I was like, this is such a mundane task of me walking up to a door, handing off food, having a conversation. But just this live aspect of me as an Uber Eats delivery driver being there was so interesting for people. And I'll never forget that experience. And I just kind of use that in my mind to think about now, behind the scenes, live streaming, showing things that normally people would not be able to see and taking them behind the curtain, I think is super cool. And if you're a business, like in that aspect, you got to do that because, what you say, Shawn, tell the story, right? Like see the story that's going on behind the scenes. That's what people want to hear. That's what people want to see. I think is just mega important.
Yeah, and just a reminder, if you're watching, if you find this content, if you're listening on the digital hospitality feed afterwards, we want you to join us. It's uncomfortable. Everything's uncomfortable when you first start doing storytelling digitally. We've all had awkward moments. If you listen to my first podcast, my first videos, actually the first time that I used video on social media, I was in Alaska with my wife before I had kids. And that was right when Facebook, like they rolled out the feature, and we were traveling throughout Alaska on a hike. And I was like, let's see if this Facebook Live thing actually works. And I couldn't believe how many people tuned in to like me talking to my wife on the trails in Alaska, because for us, people are like, oh my God, I can't wait to go to Alaska. Like, I'm so curious as to, or I've been to Alaska, you should go here and you should see this. And you start to realize, how really connected we are with these technologies that we have available. Mercedes, welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of the community. Can you take 60 seconds, introduce yourself? Who are you? What do you believe? And then tell us a story about live streaming.
Of course. Mercedes coming at you from sunny San Diego. I'm the director of sales and events for the Wood Group in Pacific Beach. And then I believe that fear is the mind killer. I think that I had a lot of fear jumping up onto a live stream. I think a lot of other people do, but fear is the mind killer. And in order to succeed, you have to essentially just be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So don't let not wanting to be on video stop you from jumping up here and saying something. And people find value everywhere, and you don't know who's going to find value from what you say up here. But yeah, I'm really interested on this whole topic. We actually are transitioning our marketing on our venues end. I've been pushing for a couple of years now to get them on TikTok, and now we are not only getting on TikTok, but we're going to start to try. TikTok's weird. You have to have enough followers to get live, I guess. But
1,000.
once we 1,000. So once we do hit that follower count, our nightclub will be live streaming the DJs.
Sweet.
And so I think that's going to be really fun and interesting. I know that it works because I've watched other people's live streams on TikTok, and I've seen people literally see them on TikTok and then go to that restaurant or bar and then get within frame of the live stream to be shown on TikTok. So it's almost like the Jumbotron effect. Like they want to be on the Jumbotron and they want other people to see them. And I think that's really interesting. I think that a lot of people find value in things that we do every day that we think is normal. And they think that is so cool and really fascinating, kind of like the Uber Eats delivering. And like, you know, even if I put like Google, I feel like one day we'll be wearing like Meta glasses and walking around and just live streaming our lives like that. Like, I just think that that's kind of where people are going. They want to be entertained at all times. And I think that's a really interesting topic. And I think as we like continue to go with it and continue to learn and grow, it's going to be insane to see what comes out of it. And I'm really excited to see all of you guys up here.
Awesome. Well, yeah, if you're listening, you don't have to be a live streamer to come up and contribute to the conversation. So Elizabeth, can you share a little bit about the topics that we do on a weekly basis, and sometimes not thinking you have something to say, but then realizing, oh, I actually can contribute?
Well, exactly, because you know, a lot of the people that are in the room are in the hospitality industry. A lot of times when we've been on LinkedIn, etc. So there's, you know, people that own restaurants. There's also, you know, others that are doing tech software and that side of things. And so there's a part where when some of the hospitality questions are being asked, I'm like racking my brain because I have a very I've had a couple of jobs in the hospitality industry, but they were just short stints. And so there's a part where I'm like, I don't even know if I have anything that I can contribute to this conversation. But what I love is thinking about it in a high level version and think about how can I know I have a story that's relevant to what we're saying. And so I will just try to spin that, you know, in try to get to the purest form of the question, and then I come back and say, okay, what does this look like through the lens of what I do for a living, or maybe some of the interactions that I have had. I do want to comment on the fact, because I'm learning this Riverside technology as we are going, and so I have pulled up the YouTube video on my phone where we are live streaming live on YouTube. And so all of Stover's comments in the chat are showing up on YouTube. And so I commented on YouTube with my YouTube account, and my comment showed up here in the Riverside chat that I had posted in YouTube. So there may be sometimes when people are watching on YouTube and they're not necessarily in the room, and their comments are going to show up here in the chat with us. I don't think that we've played with LinkedIn. It's not connected to the chat, but I did think it was fascinating that back and forth between the two in the commenting side of things. So anyway, I will things we're learning as we go. Anyway, back to you, Shawn.
I'd love. It's interesting. The more that we talk about live streaming, I mean, we have been live streaming. This community was live streaming. It just wasn't video. We were audio live streaming. We all had to be live on the call. We repurposed it into the digital hospitality podcast where people could listen on Spotify. But we were live streaming. Richard, can you share a little bit about Clubhouse? You know, your personal journey on Clubhouse, and then finding our community on Clubhouse.
Yeah, I mean, Clubhouse was such an interesting app when it first launched because you had to be invited to join it, and there was a sense of exclusivity around it, and you had a number of sort of invites that you could send a month. And I remember receiving an invite and thinking, oh, I wonder what this is, and kind of entered it with kind of real curiosity and found some incredible people, incredible conversations. There were a few conversations I wanted to avoid. You know, anything to do with politics, religion, and vaccines. which we're not going to do on here. But it was also really interesting because, you know, that's where Elizabeth and I originally connected, and we struck up a conversation, and I met all kinds of amazing people. And I think what's been really interesting for me is as I've met people on Clubhouse and gone into different rooms and heard different people talking about topics, some I knew about, some I didn't. You know, for me, it was almost like this live encyclopedia. And, you know, some pages you want to miss and other pages you don't want to leave. And it was happening right then and there. And it was very, very exciting. I remember going to a few rooms. There was one where former Cleveland Cavalier, Mr. Wade, was doing a room about his love of wine. And there was one with Elon Musk, we'll skip over him. He was doing a room that was incredibly busy. And there's all of these different people, not just celebrities, but people from all over the world sharing ideas and sharing thinking. And for me, it was just this wonderful opportunity to learn and meet new people. From a business perspective, I think what's interesting is, you know, Clubhouse is worth, in terms of business that I've bought in, has been well over 10, 20 grand. But also the business that I've given or shared with other people has been tens of thousands worth of pounds, dollars, whatever you want to call it. And I think what was fascinating about Clubhouse was this sense of you can't miss it. It was live and then it was gone. And there was this kind of almost excitement around it. I think as they messed around with the app, and I think there must have been the direction of Clubhouse that the owners or investors were doing. I think it took it away from the people and the experience and became about the tech. I think what was really interesting, there's a lesson there. You have to respect the user experience. It's not just about tech. You know, people don't really care about that. The excitement was around the conversation. And what was really interesting is I've kind of, like I said, I must have met a dozen people who I've spoke to all over the world on that app, done business with. And now the only thing that I carry on doing on there, I do a gratitude practice every day, where we normally have people from 3 or 4 continents on a call every day doing gratitude together. And I think what has been fantastic for me is building up communities, as well as learning, as well as the, you know, giving back. It's meeting amazing people. And, you know, I think it's fair to say one of the highlights of my year this year was teaching Elizabeth how to have a cup of tea in person. And actually those kind of human interactions have just been an absolute delight. And I think sometimes people, there's a really lovely expression, money breath. There's certain people on applications, whether it's LinkedIn or Clubhouse, and they've got money breath and they stink the place out. And then there's other people that you just come across and you just like, you're really interesting. I want to hang out with you. I want to learn. I want to have a giggle. And I think what's been amazing for me is almost seeing this evolution of live audio. And if you think back to what we were saying at the start about live streaming, with radio, it was always one way, with the exception of probably the Howard Stern show. But it was always one way. What live streaming audio did was make it two-way. How exciting is that?
That's a great point. And I think that's something that often gets lost in the new media and old media translation. And in radio, you're absolutely right. It was an audience of one. It was the broadcaster broadcasting to an audience, and his job or her job was to make you feel special, but you weren't contributing unless you started calling into the show. And we've got 2 seasoned radio professionals that know about call-ins, but let's talk about building that community from a radio perspective, but now a new media, understanding that the more that we get connected to LinkedIn and bring in the chats from LinkedIn and bring in the chats from YouTube and hopefully get this connected to X and, Twitch and all these other different platforms. I think the fear is in the beginning is that no one cares and that no one's listening. And I think there's something that I really want to make sure that if you guys are watching this, if you're listening to this, number one, you have to be willing to start. You have to be willing to be uncomfortable, to look stupid, sound stupid, but then you have to be consistent. It's never going to be one live stream. It's never going to be 2 live streams. To Richard's point, his life changed because he does a daily gratitude. That's daily. That's 365 days out of the year. Our calls that we do on Wednesday and Friday, those are weekly calls no matter what. Even when I'm not able to host, Stover hosts or someone from the community hosts. And that makes sure that people know this is something that I can count on. And to the best part is that you can also repurpose it afterwards. But Gavin, do you have anything you like to talk about with from a radio background on call-ins or that audience of one?
Yeah, well, the traditional call-in, you have a limited amount of time you can engage with the host. There's a good chance that he may just hang up on you if you don't get right to the point. The great thing about live streamers you see is, especially you go on Twitch or anything, is they're building a community and being able to engage for long periods of time. And on something like this, you can even bring people on and have them stay for as long as you want. But I just think the biggest thing, as I saw in radio, is that, like we talked about, it's a very passive experience where people are just hearing you broadcast to them. Being able to have that two-way connection and also find out more than you were otherwise able to. Again, you're reaching a global audience all of a sudden. It's not just state by state or national, you're reaching globally. And then, the discoverability of that. And then there's all the aspects of monetization, and there's other revenue streams. So there's so many benefits, but I wrote a paper in college on why radio would always exist. And my point was people want to have a voice. So I always like to think I kind of had the idea of Twitter before Twitter. Like people wanted to didn't turn it into an app or anything. But live streaming is just another way for people to have a voice. And then what's really cool about it is anyone can do it. Anyone listening to this, anyone watching this, you can do it yourself. Doesn't cost, it's essentially free. So yeah, go make it happen and build a community of your own. And that's why I love what we've done here. So.
That's awesome. Mike?
Yeah, and piggybacking on the community, like any radio show that you listen to, you loved it because the host had a sense of community and there was characters that were built around the show. It wasn't just, I'll use Howard Stern because he's the OG of it, but like you weren't just coming there for Howard. It was everything that was built around him, from the people on the show, the guests that would call in. You wanted to hear all of them.
Yep.
And what I think so great about the new media is anybody with a computer or phone can create their own version of what they want with that. And in the past, it was, you got 3 places to go. This is it. Call. You're lucky if you get through. If not, try again in an hour and a half, where you could spend 4 hours dialing. Now you can create this type of content with any specific topic that you love and create a community around it. That to me is what excites me. And personally, it's what kind of drove me from radio into the podcast side of things. Was you can create anything you want. There's no formats. You don't have to be restricted by things. Like, we can do whatever we want and create a community around that. To me, I'm like, it's just the very, very, very beginning of these things. And to your point earlier, Shawn, that's why you have to take chances. You have to go on here. You have to be consistent. Like, things will fail. That's okay. You did a really good piece about the Netflix fight. And it was like, Netflix had all these issues, but no one will remember. Everybody's going to go watch the next one. So I really like when you put that out there, because I think, it made me think like, okay, things might not be perfect, but you got to take your chances. You got to keep doing it. And I think we're just in the very beginning of all of this technology and all of this storytelling, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I would love to get a little bit of a sense. I know there's probably going to be people that are watching that might be worried about doing video, going on video. We talk about how show me, don't tell me, be the show, not the commercial, bring people into the story. Richard, can you share a little bit of your personal video storytelling journey of the fear before you started? And
call it, we had a thing in the 80s in the UK called video nasties, which were all the ones that were run by the government. And when I go back,
wait, what?
No. We're talking like the horror films. And when I look back at some of my old Instagram, it is like a video nasty horror film. I never want to see it. And I think there's one of those ones where it took me a while to get the confidence, and I think it was a little bit because of a number of factors. But then I go back to what I said earlier, it's just storytelling. And actually, when you take away all the barriers, and the barrier is just a camera, and I think to myself, I was with my son yesterday in London, and what was fascinating for me was we went to a venue with my father, the three of us, 3 generations. We went to this beautiful building called the Royal Albert Hall, and everybody in the UK will know that venue. It's beautiful, curved building that was built by Queen Victoria, and they do concerts in there. Yesterday, there were 5,500 people watching a podcast being recorded by 3 journalists in the UK called the News Agents. They're one of the top performing podcasts in the UK. They're definitely in the top 500 globally. And the lead journalist in there is a woman called Emily Matlis. And she's very famous. She did the interview with Prince Andrew, if you've ever seen the film where he said, "I don't sweat." That was the journalist that got that from him. And she was the lead political newsreader, newscaster in the UK. And her and 2 of her colleagues left the BBC and set up their own podcast. They filled the Albert Hall. They're in the top podcasts in the UK. They're going to tour it globally. They are huge. And I think what's really interesting when Mike was talking about, okay, how is media evolving? What was interesting was listening to their story yesterday, where they all quit the safest jobs you can imagine, paid each month, and they went off and did a podcast, and they were worried, what if nobody listens? And there they were in the Albert Hall with 5,500 people watching them live. And I think there's that little bit where, I do go back to some of my old Instagram films and videos on there, and I do wince and I do cringe, and I look in horror, and I blame Elizabeth for pushing me to keep doing them. But what's really interesting is the last 2 or 3 months, they are rocking. And I think sometimes we forget, we see perfection, whether it's in a film, whether it's in a sports, and hopefully the Cleveland Browns can win in Denver tonight.
Yes, please.
The reason for that will actually probably be a lot of luck with the Browns. But the point is, when you see a great performance, whether it be sport, whether it be film, whether it be music, it's taken a lot of practice to get there. It doesn't just happen. And I think what happens with social media is we always see the swan at the end, that kind of really smooth, beautiful, completed footage. What we don't see is all the practice that goes in to get there. And I look at some of the content that I'm putting out now, and I think to myself, that is because of the work that I put in 12, 18 months ago. Elizabeth's nodding. Come on, Elizabeth, save me.
Sorry, just taking me a minute. It's fine. The mute button. It looks like we might have lost Shawn. He'll probably be back on in just a second. But I am so with you on that. I was listening to this girl on YouTube, and she'd written a song about do it badly, do it terribly. Like, we get stuck because we need to buy the fanciest gear, we need to have all these ducks in a row before we can create and post, and I'm so guilty of that too. But and so right now, here is your permission slip. I'm writing it out to you and handing it through the screen. Is give us your C+ work. Stop editing yourself to the point where you are paralyzed to post, and give us the because we grow with you as you learn how to do those things. And so there's going to be times where you hit it out of the park. And what's so funny is sometimes the ones that we overthink, we over-polish, we overdo all these things for, don't really perform that well. And the ones where we're just ourselves and we just show up actually draw more people and actually get more engagement. And you can't bank on that. You don't know which one, which version of that is going on. And so, Gavin, I wanted to throw it to you and see your thoughts on the live streaming, on the even on the podcasting. I thought was very, very interesting. So I'll hand it over to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think an aspect that we haven't completely touched on with live streaming is the immediacy of it. When you work in radio or traditional linear TV or anything, things can be set and you may not be on the air when something happens, right? With live streaming, you can immediately react to it. You can immediately get audience feedback. You can engage with people and have a discussion about, oh my gosh, this just happened. We want to get our reaction out there. So that's a neat thing. And then also with new media, what I was thinking about between Michael and Richard talking is, with athletes, when they're coming up, they're, especially in the 90s and 2000s, the only way for them to get their message out would have been through a newspaper article or through a journalist, through maybe a radio interview, maybe you did a TV interview. But now we've seen tons of athletes. I'm trying to think of a Cavaliers or a Browns player that's doing it. I can't right now, but let's say Draymond Green or Shannon Sharp with his Shake Club Shay Shay podcast. Like, you can be the athlete, in Draymond's case, the current athlete, and also have a podcast that's reaching people and getting your own message out and being able to deliver that. So you don't have to go through traditional avenues of media to be able to get your message out. And also, you look at some of the biggest names, and I'll keep it to sports media, guys like Pat McAfee. The reason they're so massive is because they were internet first. They started out with Barstool Radio, but then they went more into their own YouTube platform and their own show on there and built a real community. And that's all live streaming. Those are live stream shows that go out to a global audience. And so that's just a benefit of the time we're living in. And I think everyone should, it's kind of an adapt or die thing. I think we saw it in radio, Mike, it started out with, hey, let's get on Twitter, but then it turned into, let's be streaming the show that we're doing. Even if they're just looking at a host and a producer, that's still really engaging. And then I think some of the best people doing it right now are the ones bringing up the live chat of the YouTube section and interacting with what people are saying as they're going. Because if it's a massive show, it means a lot to hear your comment get put on the screen. It means a lot to be heard, even if you're not calling into the show, So I think all the interaction and the global aspect of it is just so big, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. I think someone was mentioning earlier about using meta glasses. I think that was an episode of Black Mirror, which personally kind of scared of, but we may be headed there. So get ready to live stream every aspect of your life.
Seriously. And one thing I want to jump back to is the immediacy part. Something Richard and I have talked about in the past is it's the editing part of this that can really slow the process down. But there is so much forgiveness from the audience when it's a live stream, because they know it's happening in the moment. So things may crash, things may be weird, like stuff may happen. And yet, no, Shawn, we cannot hear you, and we don't see you on stage either. So you might have to shift from the background to the stage area. I don't know how you change that on this program, but you may be backstage. But the idea that like Shawn right now is gone, and yet there's so much forgiveness within the live streaming side of things for the quality of the video, for the stumbling through the words that you're saying, through all of these things. There is such a wide space for you in that. So I'm going to throw it back to Shawn, and now that he has rejoined the land of the living.
No, thank you for, back to we did a video on our Cali Barbecue Media YouTube page, which Mike was referring to, about how Netflix won the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight. And the premise of the video was that Netflix had a lot of issues. They had 100 million people that watched that fight, 60 million concurrent, the most watched boxing, if you can call it boxing. We'll call it an entertainment event. But they had so many issues. They had so many. My screen was buffering here in San Diego, California. We had people on Twitter, on X, that were tweeting about how terrible, what a big embarrassment for Netflix, and what are they going to do? And this is going to tank their shareholder price. They had audio issues. Pre-fight interview with Evander Holyfield, with Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys, like where he can't hear the host that's sitting next to him. And you're looking at it and it's like, is this amateur hour? But this is live stream. Like, they're learning how to do what ESPN has done. They're learning how to do what HBO boxing, Showtime boxing had done for so long. And if you go back to when Showtime started or HBO started, which don't do the fights anymore, they were probably terrible in the beginning. Like, the point is, Netflix will get it fixed by the time that they're streaming on Christmas Day. Christmas Day, the NFL, Netflix is going to be on the NFL. And guess what? They're probably going to have issues, but they're going to figure it out. And then they're going to be on WWE. But it's like, this is a race to how quickly can you adapt and realize that Netflix, literally a red envelope. They used to send out red envelopes with CDs, and now they're live streaming the biggest entertainment events of our lifetime. And the question is, to take it to a business context, so many B2B companies host webinars. How can we host a webinar to get an expert with someone's expertise and a topic? And then we have these closed webinars that you have to register for so that they can go into the CRM to make sure that, like, now we can have a sales lead and then we can follow up with them afterwards. But so many times those webinars aren't accessible after the fact. And I'm going to make a bold prediction on this show that in 2025, if not 2026, webinars are dead. Businesses will start to adapt and they'll go, why aren't we live streaming this? People in marketing departments, in the content space will go, this doesn't make sense to have a closed loop webinar when we can live stream it on YouTube. We can live stream it on LinkedIn. It can be accessible as a podcast afterwards. What is happening with webinars? Hey, Marissa's in the house. Welcome.
Hello.
I just made a bold prediction that webinars are dead. Live streaming will kill webinars. By the end of 2025, businesses will no longer be doing webinars.
I will disagree with you.
Okay, tell me why. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Okay. I think you need to do both because they're both different structures.
Okay.
Live streaming allows you to do like live engagement, kind of like what Liz was saying, and really get like some raw emotion. But webinars can be, well, one, the registration factor for that is really good. It benefits your email list. And if you're sponsored, then you can share those or collaborate with the registered people. But I think webinars, their format will change and not like people showing up live to that. So recording a webinar with the intent to repurpose it later, I think is still alive and well.
Can you can you turn your camera just a little bit?
Yeah.
Up there so we can see your whole face. Oh, the other way.
Okay.
One more time. The original way. Perfect. There we go. Awesome. Now we're perfect.
Okay.
I'm producing. I'm live stream producing. Just want to make sure everybody's got their best foot forward. Marissa, can you share real quickly for the community? Give us your 60 seconds. Because this is your wheelhouse.
Yes, my name is Marissa Callie. I'm a virtual event producer. So I produce and strategize digital content from strategy to execution. And a lot of it is pre-recorded webinars, podcasts, or training sessions, and some conference stuff. So anything in that corporate world, I am helping people create that. And
which companies that you work with, if you're allowed to share, do the best job with webinars?
Right now, the one that I'm seeing the best is it's a company called Session Board.
Okay. What sets them apart?
Well, they have like a whole, they have a big strategy behind what they do in terms of, it's not just a webinar and hope that people show up. Like, they take your questions, they ask on social, like get your questions, they have you register. The guest is there, it's repurposed into a podcast. They do a follow-up email. So it's not just like, hey, we're going live with this webinar. This is the core of our marketing for our tech. They're selling like a tech tool for sales people in the event space. So they're really kind of like what you were talking about earlier, Shawn, where you were saying you were talking to people about business, like on Behind the Smoke, and it
Yep.
kind of like filtered into like digital hospitality and stuff like that. So it's not necessarily a direct ROI into like, hey, we're building these relationships with people that will then eventually hopefully talk about our tool and then sell it. So
What's the cadence? How consistent are they? Is it a weekly webinar, monthly webinar?
once a week, yeah.
Week. Awesome. Sweet.
Yeah.
But it is a podcast.
I've only watched the webinar, so I don't know. I consume it via the webinar, so
Okay.
I have not to see if they have a podcast.
You consume it live though, as a webinar?
I've been to like 2 live sessions out of, well, and now I'm on their email list, so I get all of their stuff and see. And it's in the event space, so I kind of want to be involved in those conversations and show up and engage in the chat.
What are your tips for anybody that's watching or listening afterwards for live streaming?
My number one tip for someone going live is, I think Mercedes said it, like just go live. I think I was like you, Shawn, just going live and diving in 2016 or 17 when Facebook had Facebook Live. But the other thing is look into the camera. So right now I'm not looking at all of you. You guys are down here and I'm looking into the camera because that will eventually, if your clip gets cut out or something like repurposed for social, at least you're forming a relationship by looking into the camera. So it's my pet peeve when I see people looking down at themselves like, oh yeah, like I have this really valuable thing to say, and they're looking at themselves, and to me it's just like I can't form a connection with you. So
that's a great tip. Richard, do you have anything to say about webinars?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, a bit like radio, it's going to evolve. I'm experimenting with doing a webinar in January and just playing around with it to see how it goes. I think what's really important, and again, it goes down to having great conversations with people. Don't be boring has never been more important. And I think what's fascinating is there are a lot of boring webinars out of there. So how can you do something, that picks up on what Marissa was saying in terms of the technology and the technical skills of, connecting with the audience, but also making sure you do great content. Why should somebody want to hang out with you? If they don't want to hang out with you on a webinar because your content's boring, what's it going to be like working with you? It sounds harsh, but I went on a webinar the other week to learn more about AI.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I really wish I just asked ChatGPT because it would have been more interesting. Yeah, I've heard other speakers that have been absolutely like draw you in and have a great conversation. And I think there's that kind of don't be boring has never been more important for webinars, live streaming, and content than it is now.
Elizabeth, any thoughts on webinars versus live streaming?
I do love the webinar part of things where with breakout sessions, etc., where you can give people projects to do. Like Richard was talking about one that he did where it allowed people in a smaller setting to have those interactions, and also the networking part of webinars, etc., where you get to put into practice some of the things that you're doing. So I do find that part very interesting. I did want to mention too that back just really quick to live streaming, making sure that when you're commenting on YouTube, because I think Gavin mentioned it, that when someone shouts you out in that, make sure you're kind of branding that part of things, whether it's your name as your brand, or if you want to show up as yourself or as your business, make sure that you've titled yourself that, if that makes sense. So they actually are saying your full name, etc., over on those platforms. So if anybody's watching on YouTube, etc., make sure that you have curated the YouTube channel that you're using to comment with, to include that little bit of recognition. So anyway.
Great tips. Mercedes, do you have any thoughts on webinars versus live streaming?
Okay, I jumped back on just to give a little snippet. So I was listening to Michael Ungaro, the guy, he's in our chat, and owns San Pedro Fish Market and is an awesome guy if you've ever talked to him over the phone. But he was on Success Unscripted by Jonathan, and I listened to that whole episode, and he talked about when they first started the San Pedro Fish Market, they all took out their houses on loans. And what he said was, either adapt or you die. And it's so true to this testament, right? Like, we either adapt or we stop hosting. And that wasn't an option for you guys. And I love that it wasn't, because it felt like it wasn't an option for me either. That's why I'm here on the video, feeling uncomfortable. But I tell people this and they kind of look at me funny, but it's because when you have to adapt and you're forced to, it does funny things to you. So the one thing I appreciated about COVID is that it made me think differently. And it's part of the reason why I started Room for Revenue, and part of the reason of why I think the way I think is because during COVID, nobody had a choice. You either adapt or you fail. And I think that's so important when we're thinking about trying new things, is like LinkedIn didn't give us a choice, but we also didn't give ourselves a choice to stop showing up for each other and for the group that we've communicated, like the community we've created. And I love that about LinkedIn live rooms, or like what we're in right now, where everybody's watching, is you just have to adapt, and innovation comes when you adapt. So when you're talking about Netflix and how they failed, failure is the only way that they would have kept innovating. And I guarantee you they will become the best streaming platform because they refuse to stop innovating. They refuse to stop adapting because they know that there's an importance in it, and they know that their customers want it. So
yeah, that's great.
I jumped back on just to add that because I heard you talking and I was like, okay, I got to park the car, get out.
No, you said it perfectly, and that's why we believe so much in this community. I mean, digital hospitality is much bigger than a show. It's bigger than anything that we truly believe that it's a deep thesis. Like, it connects all of us all over the globe. And, you know, to what Elizabeth said before, she doesn't believe. Eventually, we're going to get Elizabeth to believe that she is in the hospitality business, because she is. And anyone that's watching this, everyone is in hospitality. And, you know, to Richard's point, is it B2B or B2C, business to business? It's H to H. It's human to human. And the more that we realize that we have these things available to us, like, there's nobody there in the beginning, and you got to get over it. You got to get over it. You know, one of my friends that actually joined us on a call, Daryl Stinson, he was a guest on the Digital Hospitality Show. He's a professional speaker. He talked about creating a digital flash mob. Are you willing to hear the music? Are you willing to go live when no one else, when you look like the idiot in the village dancing to music that no one else hears? But like that's how we started on Clubhouse. On Clubhouse, it was just Stover and me and Kyle and Aaron. We just got on a call and we're like, okay, let's just have our Cali. How do you turn a restaurant into a media company? Let's just do our team calls on Clubhouse. And all of a sudden, we started meeting people like Elizabeth and Richard and Scott Turner and Troy Hooper and Jason Berkowitz and Dean LeBay, and like all of these people that are now part of our tribe. And the coolest part about the tribe is that we're all curious. We're all curious, and we know that we don't have the answers. Like, we're doing a show about live streaming, knowing nothing about live streaming. Like, we've all had some experience live streaming, but we're no means experts. But that doesn't going to stop me from going and finding somebody that's really good at live streaming. And I guarantee you, whoever I find that's an expert in live streaming, they're going to tell me the same thing, that they don't know anything about live streaming, that everybody's figuring it out. You know, Riverside doesn't have it figured out. StreamYard doesn't have it figured out. LinkedIn, they don't have it figured out. You know, we're all trying to figure this thing out. And I think we'll go ahead and do a tip takeaway homework assignment, and really appreciate anybody that's watching or listening. We're going to be live again on Wednesday and on Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, 6 p.m. London time, wherever you are in the world. It's so much better when we get to see you and hear your voice, contribute to the conversation. Wednesday's topic is going to be, what is podcasting in 2025? What is podcasting? So we've done a lot of these topics before, but now since we're on video and we have a growing community, we've got a lot of podcasters in the group. We've got a lot of people that have been on podcasts. What is podcasting in 2025? That's the topic for Wednesday. But Gavin, why don't you start us out? Tip, takeaway, homework assignment on live streaming.
Yeah, this medium is always changing. And then on the video front, it takes 20 seconds of courage. Think of it that way. I read that quote the other day in a book. I never saw the movie or read the book, but in We Bought a Zoo, I guess Matt Damon says it takes 20 seconds of courage for anything. So don't worry about getting on video. I've got some facial paralysis. I got over it. You can do it too. Have fun with us. This is a great community, and I'm excited to see. I'm really excited to hear about podcasting in 2025 because, again, that's my industry.
That was awesome. Appreciate you, Gavin. Elizabeth, go ahead.
Okay, a couple of things. One, whoever is in Riverside and has been on camera, don't completely exit out. This is for everybody. Anytime you come on Riverside, they are uploading your personal video to Riverside so that it'll be a higher quality on the other end for them. So make sure you just leave the window open to let it finish out doing its uploading thing. That'd be fantastic. And then also, I was noticing over on YouTube, because this is already live and out there, there underneath the YouTube video, there's the little clip button, which you can create your own YouTube shorts from the content from here. So congratulations, Richard, you've just created content. Mercedes, your last share, there's an awesome, you can go out, grab that, and then there's ways for you to be able to download that clip to be able to reshare to your other platforms. So people that join this call, you are getting the opportunity to, in the moment, in your most natural voice, in your most natural talking to your friends here on Digital Hospitality, to come and create content here and then go grab it from YouTube after the fact. Remember, it's a little clip button that's underneath, and it will post it as a short onto your YouTube channel. So I do want you to know, again, maximize that YouTube channel for this type of content, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, back to you, Shawn.
Awesome. Great tips. Yes. If you join us, congratulations, you're on a podcast. You can get over your fear. You can get better. That's why we do the 60 seconds. We want to introduce you. You never know who's listening. And there's one thing that we've learned by repurposing the Clubhouse calls and the LinkedIn live calls is that we have sometimes hundreds, if not thousands of people that will listen to these calls afterwards. So if you're listening, please join us. It's so much better when we get to hear from the community, wherever you are in the world, whatever you're building. If you have a question, please join us. And we're all weirdly available. So reach out to anybody on any platform. Richard, tip, takeaway, homework assignment.
Yeah, really interesting experiment today. The takeaway is going to be keep practicing. And I've just put a link into LinkedIn and also on here. There's a TED Talk. It's less than 4 minutes long. It's called How to Start a Movement.
Love it.
One of my favorite TED Talks. It's really funny. And it takes a lone nut to start a movement. Well, luckily, we have a number of nuts from Canny Barbecue. We might as well do it.
Richard, you're the best. Thank you. Mercedes, tip, takeaway, homework assignment.
Okay, so my homework assignment is my takeaway and my homework assignment are both from Elizabeth. So my homework assignment is going to be to reutilize or repurpose that content that's going to be made from this, which will hopefully bring more people to our community, because I always love when we grow it and find more people that are curious. And my takeaway is also going to be, don't over edit in order to publish. And don't overthink it. I know that sometimes I overthink things, and I'll have 20 people look at it before I even publish it. And they said it was fine the first time. So don't overthink it and just hit publish. And you never know, like you said, Elizabeth, it's like the ones that I don't overthink always overperform. And I didn't even have to put that much effort into it. So
that's awesome. Yeah, content in the cloud is for the birds. Publish it. Mike, tip, takeaway, homework assignment.
Yeah, one, I'm learning that my internet downstairs with Riverside is a lot stronger. So all Riverside's calls I take moving forward will not be upstairs. We had actually a blackout during Thanksgiving between literally when we started eating, and I think the internet hasn't quite recovered quite yet, which is a whole different story. It was kind of cool in a weird way. But my takeaway from Marissa, which she had talked about looking at the camera. So for your clips, because in my head I'm thinking, I said something really good. My head was down here. So I will look at the camera as much as I really want to look at everybody's face. I will do that. And other homework is just to takeaways from this on how we can improve for Wednesday, Friday, and forever.
Yeah, and just a reminder to the community: email us at podcast@calibbq.media if you want to be added to the Google invite. It's going to be a lot easier now that we have the Riverside link. Kyle from our team, he's going to build a landing page with all of the instructions of how to join the community, how to join the calls, things to prepare. But you don't need to prepare anything. You just need to join. You can join from a smartphone. Mercedes joined from a smartphone, but it's a chance for us to continue to grow, continue to evolve. If you have topic ideas, podcast@calibbq.media. If you have ideas how to make these live streams more accessible and grow this community, we are open to hear those. It's going to be an awesome December. So thank you guys for joining. We appreciate it. We're grateful. And that's it. That's the end of the live stream. Go live stream.
Woo! One last thing though, if you join from a smartphone, you need a different link to join.
Really?
Yeah,
Good
to get on stage, you need a different link. So